Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 124. 124 is a good number, and I titled this episode From the Future. This is going to be narrated by Robotic Michael, the robotic version of myself. No, the reason I decided to do an episode from the future is because I have been reading a lot of futurism books and a lot of futurists' views on the world. And I have just been really inspired by some of the things that I've read, and I am trying to learn how to think like a futurist in many respects. And so, because the last week's episode, the mid-year scorecard, was all about me, I'm going to make this episode all about us. What does the writer of the future potentially look like? All right, so real quick announcements. First things first, my book, 150 Self-Publishing Questions Answered, launches Monday, July 27th. Exciting times. So book launch is finally coming up. The reviewers, those of you who agreed to review the book, should have the book in your inbox. You should have received a reminder this past Monday, and you will receive another email in your inbox on Monday with links to where you can leave the review. And if you have not gotten your review copy, you can get that by visiting authorlevelup.com/QA advance. And if you happen to be listening to this, 2 weeks or 2 months or even 2 years afterward, just reach out to me at authorlevelup.com/contact, and I would be happy to give you a review copy. No problem. And you'll get it in ebook and in audio. So second thing is I'm going to make some updates to the lessons learned segment. The reason for that is because of a book that I'm writing here very soon, and so there's going to be some strategic things I'm doing with that. So essentially, I would give away, 1 or 2 or 3 lessons learned every week. I'm going to restrict that to one so that I can keep the length of the episodes down, and then 2, because everything that I don't put in the episodes is going to end up in a book series that I'm writing for writers, and I'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. The next thing I wanted to talk about was that I was a guest panelist at the Evergreen Oasis Writing Retreat this past weekend. I was on a panelist with 3 lovely ladies, and we talked about outlining, we talked about drafting, we answered a ton of writing questions live from the writing community, and it was just a lot of fun. Like it was a 2-hour long writing panel, and I was telling the other panelists that I'd never been on a 2-hour long writing panel, and but the 2 hours just flew by. So I will drop a link to where you can watch that in the show notes. I talked about writing into the dark. We had some really great and productive discussions about outlining versus not outlining, and just all sorts of really good stuff. So be sure to check that out. And also, I wanted to let everybody know about a cool tool that I found to outline your novel easily. And that tool is called Story Lattice. I actually did a YouTube video on it this past Friday on my channel. And it is a tool basically that allows you to outline in your browser, and you can basically export that into a really simple text file that you can then import into or copy and paste into Scrivener or Microsoft Word. And it's one of the best performing videos of the past few weeks on my channel. Almost 1,500 people have watched it, and all the comments have been mostly positive. So if you're interested in a tool that can help you and it won't break the bank, it's very affordable. I think it'll shock you how affordable it is. You can visit storylattice.com or just go to my YouTube channel at authorlevelup.com and just click the video button, and you can see the video in action. And I also wanted to let everybody know, and I think I said this on the Writer's Journey podcast, but I'm putting out a call to action for any writing app developers. If you have a writing app, or you're thinking about a writing app, and you want someone who's got a lot of authorial experience, that would be me, to test the app or to give you some feedback on it, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. I would be happy to look at it, take a look at it at no charge. And in fact, I am committing to reviewing every major writing app on my YouTube channel by the end of 2021. So if you want some free exposure for your writing app, I'd like to basically start comparing all of the writing apps that are out there as a way for people to start seeing what the differences between the apps are so they can make a better decision on the best potential writing app for them. So just get in contact with me at authorlevelup.com/contact. If you happen to know a developer, feel free to spread the word. All right, so those are the announcements for the week. My wins for the week, I successfully got about 2 to 3 videos in the pocket from my YouTube channel, and my video editor, I mentioned that I hired an editor for my channel, absolutely dominated these videos. I mean, they're just fantastic. They're 1,000% better than anything I could do on my own. So the first video drops on Friday, and that was the test video that he did for me. And fair warning that that video was good. We had some kinks we had to work out. We were just kind of getting to know each other. What comes afterward in the next couple of weeks is even better. So I'm excited. And the last win for the week is that I finished a new book. I mentioned that I've been working on this top secret project. Essentially what it is it's a series. I haven't finalized the name yet, but it's a series that goes into everything that I've been learning over the past few weeks. So on this show, I've been doing every episode, I talk about lessons learned, right? So I'm taking all those lessons learned and all of those ideas of the week, and I'm compiling them into book format so that they're a little bit more permanent. So it'll be organized by each of the 5 strategic priorities I have for my business. So content creator, marketer, technology-driven writer, data-driven writer, writer of the future, and then ideas you can steal. And it'll just be kind of a way to start just getting some ideas out into the world. And ultimately, I've made a commitment to continue learning and learn something every week in every area of my business. And so why not pass that along to you guys? And this book will be very, very nitty-gritty. It won't be your typical writing book. It'll be very, very different. It's the most different type of writing book I've ever done. So I'm very curious to get it into people's hands. It is with my editor right now, so it is legit. And then once it gets back from my editor, I'm going to format it and record the audiobook. So it's going to come pretty fast, but I'm not going to release it until the end of August because I don't want to cannibalize the launch of 150 self-publishing questions answered. But if you are on my Patreon channel, you will probably get it in the next few weeks. So if you're not a patron, you can support me at patreon.com/Michael Laron. All right, and so the lesson I learned this week was in writing this new book, which is how to write 4 extra books per year with just 30 minutes per week. So every Friday I get a little reminder, and it says, I think I call it like learning opportunities. And I basically sit down at some point on Friday for about 15 to 30 minutes, and I write down everything I've learned in each of the 5 areas of my business. And if I didn't learn something, I go off and I learn something real quick. And it can just be something simple. And I write that down, and then I basically write a little bit of a narrative. So like it might be like 300 to 500 words of what I learned, why I thought it was important, and why I think it might be important for me and my business or for writers in general. And then I move on. So I do this for every week in all 5 areas of my business. And at the end of 12 weeks, which is a quarter, I have a book, which is pretty cool. So all I had to do is go back and edit everything real quick and make sure it was good, and then I'm golden. So if I do this quarterly, which is my goal, at least at first, that's 4 extra books per year, which is 30 minutes per week, on top of what I'm already doing, which is really, really cool. So that was a lesson I learned about efficiency and how to produce stuff. So idea of the week, this one's just real quick. I've been working on my Author Income Dojo product. I'm starting production on that full-time starting this weekend. And I got some interest from a literary agent. And this literary agent is one of the top literary agents in the country. And we jumped on a Zoom call, and we were talking about the tool, and we were talking about some of the unique problems that literary agents have. And it was very eye-opening for me. You know, he was telling me that, they have so many clients, and every month or every quarter, they've got to pay all those clients because the publisher pays the agent, and then the agent has to split the income between the publisher, sometimes another agent if it's foreign rights sales, because that usually involves another literary agent, and the author. And they are doing it all manually right now, and it's just a pain. So when he looked at my tool, he's like, hey, this looks great. It's not something that I would use, but what I would really like is a solution that can split my income, kind of like Publish Drive's Abacus, right? So that's my idea of the week. If anybody out there wants to develop a solution for literary agents, if you can develop a solution that can track royalties and split income so that literary agents don't have to do manual accounting every week, oh man, that would be a killer app. Again, it's not the app that I'm going to create, but it would be a killer app that would probably, literary agents would be lined up to pay money for it. All right, so let's get into the topic of the week here. And the topic is what the writer of the future might look like. And when I say writer of the future, I'm talking about tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20, 30 years from now, 50 years from now. And so as we move into the rest of this episode, I invite you to dream with me as I make some predictions. I might make some controversy, might make some people uncomfortable. I might connect some dots that you probably never thought were connectable. And I'm not going to hold myself liable for anything in here if it doesn't happen. I'm not Nostradamus. You're not going to hear any quatrains here or any doomsday scenarios. My crystal ball is broken. When the governor shut down the state, my crystal ball was in the repair shop and they shut down after the coronavirus. And now I just lost my crystal ball. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I do follow the industry. I follow the news. I pay very close attention to technology and how it's evolving and science and how that's evolving. And I think there's some really interesting things on the horizon, whether they materialize for writers or not. I think it's fun to dream about them because I think it's a way for us to start thinking about the conversations that we want to have with developers at large in terms of the different types of tools that we want. I think that is immensely important. If you think about the writing app at its core hasn't really changed that much since the 70s. If you look at the history of word processors, and you look at them today and you look at them then, they're really not all that different. I mean, yes, the apps of today are glitzier. They've got some more modern features, but the core of the writing app, which is the word processor, hasn't really changed. I wonder how that's going to change. So, all of this is based on observations around what is the main human goal here, right? Because it's one thing to dream about all this technology and so on and so forth, right? But that doesn't really mean anything. There has to be a underlying reason, an underlying motive for people to adopt technology, to do things differently, to change industries, to change their own careers, because people aren't going to do that unless they have a specific motivation to do it. People just don't innovate for innovation's sake. That's why at businesses and corporations, people resist change. People resist change. Writers resist change. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But what I do think is that what will move writing as an industry and the writing profession forward is this desire to get more done in less time. I think that is a trend that has manifested itself over and over again in society. The clearest example of this is the iPhone. People adopted the iPhone and smartphones in general because the phone allowed them to do things that either it took them a long time to do, or it was inconvenient for them to do, or it consolidated things that they were doing in many different places. So like, for example, it's awfully convenient to have a phone, a browser, and an iPod all together, right? And it's also awfully convenient to be able to send emails on my phone as opposed to being tethered to a computer. So I can get more things done in less time, right? Like if I want to go somewhere, it was kind of a pain to call a taxi and call a cab, and then I had to carry cash. Then I had to worry about getting scammed, or you got some weird taxi driver. I'm worried about getting ripped off. No, now we have Uber and Lyft and ride sharing apps where we don't have to worry about that. And while we're in those cars, we can get more done in less time, right? So I think this fundamental desire to get more done in less time, especially in the modern era when you think about technology, I think is something that's going to continue to manifest itself in the writing community. I mean, you just think about Scrivener. Scrivener lets you get more done in less time, right? Because you don't have to worry so much about formatting. You can just focus on the app itself and the writing experience. Apps like BookFunnel, apps like Vellum, they allow you to get more done in less time so you can spend more time writing. So I think no matter what happens, I think that is the overarching goal of humanity, to get more done in less time, all right? Or certainly of writers. Now, when I think about technology, the overarching goal of technology is to democratize what is difficult, expensive, or time consuming. So, what do I mean by democratizing what is difficult, expensive, or time consuming? Well, there was a time not that long ago, just to use a smartphone example, when having a mobile phone was an extreme luxury. You didn't have a mobile phone unless you were someone who was important. And that started with beepers and pagers. Those were important people in our society because the everyday person didn't have those. And as technology improved, now the phones became, the quality became better. They were able to do more, and the cost of production came down so that when the right technology came about, they became mainstream. So I think when you think about writers wanting to get more done in less time, and then when you think about technology democratizing what is difficult, expensive, or time consuming, I think you have an interesting intersection, and that is the lens in which we can start to view things and maybe make some predictions about what we might see in the future. So why is this important? Well, I think it's important in a COVID-19 era, in a post-pandemic era, because I think that there are going to be some things that happen as a result of the pandemic that are going to accelerate the change curve. So here's some things. I call these the dots. These are just some dots that are kind of floating about. They may not make a whole lot of sense, but I think if you start connecting them to technology and what we might be able to expect, then I think you can start to make some insights into the future. So first things first, COVID-19 is going to drive faster innovation. What's going to end up happening is that corporations are going to adopt automation faster, mainly because they're going to be losing more money and they're going to have to figure out a way to stanch that bleeding, if that's even the right word, stanch. And so they're going to eliminate more jobs and replace those jobs with automation. And public policy is going to have to catch up to avoid mass joblessness. And I think what's also going to happen is there are going to be a lot of people that are realizing, I don't want to work this job anymore. I want to follow my dream. And you're going to see more people jump into the arts, into the creative realms to follow their passions, all because jobs are disappearing. And I also think, I've certainly seen some articles about this, the depopulation of dense urban areas and the rise of new geographic centers around the world. I think a lot of people are going to realize it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to live in a place like New York City or LA or San Francisco. And I think you're going to see a mass exodus of that, which means that people are going to have more time and they're going to be able to work from anywhere, which I think is a really interesting thing. It's almost like a location independent lifestyle is going to go mainstream. And then you think about more autonomous driving and transportation. So as Teslas of the world and more autonomous vehicles become safer and they become more adopted, I think that we're going to start to continue to see those be more mainstream. And that's going to mean that people are going to have more time in their cars to either consume or create content, or at least drive experiences that matter to them. I also think that advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning and blockchain are just right around the corner. I think that each of them are waiting for their watershed moment. So I think everybody knows what artificial intelligence is and machine learning is at a high level now, or at least a lot more people do than they did, say, 3 or 4 years ago. And I think people know what Bitcoin is. Maybe fewer know what blockchain is. And I think we're just waiting for something or some event to bring those further into the mainstream, which will change everything. I also think that more people are going to want to start ditching their devices or eliminate dependencies due to health issues. That's not going to come right away, but it's not inconceivable. There's been so much research about smartphones and cell phones in general about how they can be harmful to our health, and so it's not inconceivable to think that future generations that haven't been born yet may want to ditch devices. They may favor voice and audio. And so those technologies will likely become more prominent as the years go by. And, I think in order to survive, those are my dots. Those are kind of some of the things that I think are going to happen that are going to kind of change our landscape, in the next 10 years. These things are going to be, they're going to, if you look at the future, I think there's going to be all sorts of things that are going to be different about the world. COVID certainly will accelerate the change. And I just think there's going to be so many things. And so when I think about authors, I think that I don't know what's going to happen, right? I don't know. But what I do know is that we have to be nimble or we're going to be left behind. This is a very difficult time for traditional publishers right now because all of those bad decisions that they made all those chickens are starting to come home to roost, like not paying attention to the ebook, right? And making the paperback king, not focusing on digital marketing opportunities. And there's just so many things that they've done wrong over the past few years. And I think that they're struggling right now to figure out how they survive. I think we as indies have to be careful not to rest on our laurels of success right now, because I know a lot of writers are being super successful. We have to remember that every industry sector has a fall at some point. And what might the fall of indie authors look like? I don't know. But what I do know is that we have to be nimble, and we've got to continue to evolve, continue to adapt, continue to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, or we face the risk of being left behind. So what I like to do now is make some fun predictions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at some things that I think can happen sometime between now and the next 3 years. And then I'm going to slowly start to move out further into 30 years out, just to see kind of what the world of writing might look like. So when I think about now, and when I say now, I mean the next 1 to 3 years, I think about discoverability. It's one of those things that we still haven't solved yet, and I wonder if in the future we might have book sampling search engines. So like when you search for something, anything on Google, right? You get search results, and sometimes in those search results you get samples of a YouTube video. You'll get like snippets of a YouTube video that Google thinks will answer your question. And I wonder if that technology isn't in the works for audiobooks. If you think about audiobooks, it's kind of hard to search for them. It's a very manual process. If you search for audiobooks, you've got to click on the book, then you got to read the description, then you got to listen to it. I think that someone somewhere in Amazon or Google, I think they're working on some method of discovery for audiobooks. So like if you type in space thriller, right, then you get served 30-second demos of 3 different books with a very easy call to action, and you can pick which one you like. Kind of the same thing with ebooks. I wonder if the discoverability is going to change at some point, because it is kind of stale, and I think that readers are always looking for more curated experiences. So we'll see if that happens. Also, I think there's going to continue to be more buzz around AI software for developmental editing. I've seen a couple of different AI software companies pop up over the past year or two, and they're selling services that basically will look at your manuscript and attempt to tell you what the structural weaknesses are. I don't think the technology is there yet, but I think that the trend is more important than the quality of the technology. And I think that people are going to continue to discover these types of software, and I think people are going to start voting with their wallet more than they have in the past. And so we're going to maybe start seeing some advances in AI software for developmental editing that could potentially compete with a developmental editor down the road. I also think the rise of podcasting and video from anywhere with the rise of podcasting and video anywhere, I think, is a trend. Anchor is it started off as a social media network, but then they pivoted and moved into podcasting, where they do podcasting. Anyone can create a podcast for free. They basically democratized podcasting and allowed people to do it with their smartphones. I just got an offer to be an affiliate for a company that basically uses AI to eliminate background noise on conference calls. Now, I didn't accept that offer because it wasn't on my brand, but I was doing some research into the technology, and it's really, really interesting. You know, if you've got a crying baby or a barking dog, this AI can eliminate that from your recording in real time. I think that's really interesting. This technology started, or at least it was very prominent with Adobe Audition, where they've got a feature where you can edit out waveforms that don't belong. So like there's a video on YouTube, I think somewhere, of someone eliminating a telephone ring from like a movie. They can do that because of the way that the waveforms look. Spectral waveform technology has come a long way. So I wonder if in the future more people are going to be able to podcast and record video anywhere with background noise and background replacement. So imagine, you do a podcast from your car and there's passing cars nearby, and software can eliminate that. Or if you want to be an author and go and promo your book, but you don't really have a space in your house that looks good, or maybe you want to start a YouTube channel, then you can replace your background with something that looks a little bit nicer. Microsoft Teams has this technology where it basically is like a green screen, and you can make yourself look like you're in space or in a forest. Or I think this technology, it already exists, and it's going to create some interesting opportunities, I think, particularly for authors who want to start promoting their work. Now, as we start moving out into the short term, I call it the short term. So this is the next 3 to 5 years. There's really not much happening, I think, 1 to 3 years from now. But as we get into 3 to 4 years, I think there's going to be some more interesting things. So in 3 to 5 years, what does the world look like? So it's 2020 now. 3 to 5 years would put us into 2023 to 2025. I think, and this is just a hunch, and this is a hunch just based on some simple observations, I think that more writers are going to start demanding more technology enhancements from book retailers. I think a lot of authors don't have a prolific problem right now because they haven't written enough books to understand that it takes a lot to manage. The more books you have, the more time and energy and effort it takes to manage all those books. And I think more writers, especially big writers, are going to start demanding more technology enhancements from book retailers. Like, for example, I shouldn't have to log into 10 different dashboards to upload one book. There should be some sort of software out there that allows me to input all of my books data once and then push it to all of the different retailers out there. Now, traditional publishers have this technology. They've had it for a very long time, and they use it every day. We could use the same standard. There's nothing that says that we can't. It's just a matter of whether book retailers will accept it. All right. So I think that more technology enhancements from book retailers that allow prolific authors to upload their books in less time and spend less time managing everything, I think is going to be important. I think more people are going to want access to their sales data in a way that is more meaningful to them. You guys know I've talked about that at length. Right now, book retailers really don't offer that, but I think there's going to be more pressure. All right, and then the next thing I think is going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years is I think that traditional publishers are going to start investing in emerging technology. So AI, different types of technology that will help them sell more books. I think you're going to see the start of that. They may be doing it already. I don't know, but if they are, it sure isn't working. But I think they're going to get more serious about it. I think that the economic hard times is really going to force them to start thinking more about automation, start thinking about streamlining their processes and how they can use technology to make more money, because they're going to have to do more with less. So that's 3 to 5 years out. I think we're going to start seeing some technological enhancements about 3 to 5 years out. Then we move into what's called the mid-range, which is anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So 2025 to 2030, 5 to 10 years. What will the world look like? Well, I think if the trends in developmental editing continue, where you've got AI that can reliably replace a developmental editor, I think that is possible, right? Now, some people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but here's the thing about developmental editing. The only reason authors pay thousands of dollars for a developmental editor is because there's no good alternative. I think if you had an AI that could look at your manuscript and make recommendations that are useful to you, and you only had to pay $100 or $200 for the use of that AI, and it's good enough, I think authors are going to side with good enough, and they're going to stop paying developmental editors. Doesn't mean the profession's going to go away, but if you introduce a better, cheaper alternative, then I think people are going to go for that. That doesn't exist today, which is why developmental editors can charge so much money. Also, I think that something that could be really, really interesting, and I think it will eventually happen. I just wonder why people haven't got onto it yet, and I think it's because of the technology. I think that if you look at fan fiction, like sites like Comaful, sites like Wattpad, different places where there's fan fiction for like best-selling writers, wouldn't it be interesting if there was automated and profit-focused fan fiction? So create a platform that can let readers write in the world and then let artificial intelligence and blockchain handle the rest. So imagine if imagine if J.K. Rowling created a platform, and maybe she's done, I think maybe she did something similar to this already, but like imagine if it was more sophisticated. Imagine a platform where anyone can write in the Harry Potter world, and they just basically have to pay a fee to start writing in the world. They pay the fee, and then anything that they write would be scanned by the platform. So it would be kind of like if you write something, you would submit it to like an editor to make sure it fits the canon, like a series Bible. It has to adhere to the series Bible. Maybe in the future, all of that gets handled by AI, so that George R.R. Martin and J.K. Rowling and all these big name authors can let people write in the world for a small fee. They monetize it, and and that's just kind of how it goes. That would be interesting to see if that happened. Now let's start moving into the long range and 10 to 15 years, 15 to 30 years, right? So anywhere from 2030 all the way up to 2050, what could potentially happen? So here's where I think it gets more fun. All right. So when I think about writing apps, I don't know that a whole lot is going to change with writing apps in the next 10 years. I just don't see it. I don't think developers can change a whole lot right now. I think that there will be some changes, but I still think that the fundamentals are going to be the same. But when I look further out, there's some really interesting things that could potentially happen. So if people start ditching their devices, if people don't want to be tethered to a phone or tethered to a desktop, what does that look like? Well, what if there was a writing app that didn't have a screen, that was purely driven by dictation, artificial intelligence, and thought? So if you need a screen, anything in front of you can become a screen, and you can project it in your contact lens. And you can write stories by dictation. You can write them by thinking them. Imagine if, and this is maybe closer to the 30-year part of the spectrum, but imagine if you're writing a novel, and let's say you're writing a detective novel, and you don't have a whole lot of expertise about detectives. What if you could write a novel and then have a neural link with a detective and a police chief and a coroner, and as you're writing the novel, they provide feedback to you simply by hearing the story and thinking the feedback, so that the story that you're writing is technically being written, or certainly proofread or developmentally edited or critiqued by people that have experience in what you're writing. That would be kind of interesting, right? I think about AIs writing stories. Maybe we'll be there in 30 years. Maybe we won't. It'll be interesting to see. I also think about instant translation. So being able to click a button and translate a novel, or translate audio into another language. That's I think going to be a possibility, and that will open up the world to authors who maybe don't speak English. Or open up the world to authors who speak English, who want their works translated into another language. That's possible. Also thinking about biohacking technology. Like nanotechnology, and being able to hack your brain and hack your mind into doing things that maybe you didn't think you could do. So what if there was a writing app that could sense when you were tired, and it would stop you from writing, because it would say, "Hey, Michael, you're drunk. Go home." Or, "Michael, don't write anything, because it historically, when you write this way and your heart rate is this way and your blood levels are this way and so on and so forth, oxygen levels are so on, your editor tends to have to edit more, and you make more errors. So warning sign to just go home, just stop writing, right? So what if an app could track your vitals and compare that to your writing output and make recommendations to you on the best times to write, the times maybe you should stop writing, and if there's any contradictions, it can flag those parts of the manuscript for your editor to review in greater detail later, right? So in many respects, a writing app, it kind of serves as like a nurse, and then your editor serves as more of a doctor diagnosing some of the bigger problems. But by this point, we'll probably have better sophisticated spell checkers, and maybe even a copy editor by that point as an AI, to where an editor, maybe if a human ever even touches your work, maybe they're going to take a completely different approach than they would today. They would look at it more holistically. So I think about biohacking technology, like that technology is something that often gets forgotten in terms of emerging trends, but it's certainly possible. What about like automated write spots? So like today, if you want to sell your work, if you want to go to a literary magazine or get your book made into a film or television, the studios and editors have to sift through tons and tons of slush piles, and they turn away a lot of good stuff. I imagine like a bot that you can send off, or that they can send off, like a studio can send off into every corner of the internet to find their next big hit based on certain parameters. So like maybe Wizard movies are making a comeback in the year 2040. So the bots start searching for any media content with wizards that match what the studio's looking for. And when the bot finds that content that seems to meet the parameters, it returns easy to read reports to the studio execs about the things that it found. And then the studio execs approve which ones they want to make offers for. And then the bots will make you an offer, right? Or the bots will make your bots an offer. So like, have your bots talk to my bots and maybe we'll do a deal. So you might have your own personal rights algorithm that turns away offers unless they meet a certain criteria, right? So maybe there's not enough money, or maybe they offer terms that are not palatable to you. And the bots can negotiate, and maybe both human sides need to negotiate here and there, but maybe they never speak to each other. So think about like permission levels. Like, don't approve any offers over X amount without talking to me first. You probably don't care, right? If a bot wants the rights to one of your stories and the editors are willing to pay you for it, just take the story and put the money in your bank account and you wake up with a pleasant email, right? But you would want to be actively involved with like a film, for example. But this would effectively sell rights in your sleep. And the bots could also monitor copyright compliance. So imagine a world where copyright infringement no longer exists because of blockchain. Because think about how many movies where studio execs get alleged for stealing it because of some screenplay that someone sent back in 1979, and then they took it and they made it into a movie and they didn't compensate the screenwriter for it, right? So like if you took the slush pile and you automated it and used blockchain to verify the transactions, one, that keeps studios honest and that mitigates their liability. But I think it also democratizes the process, and it would allow young people who are maybe writing on things like Wattpad or marginalized people to be paid for their work if a bot out there finds that the work suits a purpose that someone is looking for. Anyway, I'll leave the episode at that. Just a quick reminder that you can get your copy of 150 Self-Publishing Questions Answered if you'd like a review copy at authorlevelup.com/QA-advance. Hope everybody's doing great, and I will holler at you next week. Peace.
Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.